Hello.
Ooh, hello.
I tripped you up that time.
We're gonna switch things up. Welcome to Book Pop.
I'm Molly Fish.
I'm Jamie Anderson, and we are joined by another special guest, Cayce Osborne. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. I'm very happy to be here.
Welcome, Cayce.
Thank you.
I've talked to you about your book on the podcast before, but we really get to dive into it today. Cayce is the author of I Know What You Did, which came out July 2023.
Yep.
But Cayce has also worked as a writing tutor and a news monitor and a graphic designer and a feature writer in a women's magazine and an associate editor of a literary magazine.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you're currently working for UW-Madison in science communication and public engagement.
Correct. Yes.
And in the meantime, you are writing.
I am. Every little scrap of time I can find.
Yeah, so you're busy.
I am. I have 2 youngish kids, elementary and middle school. So they have classes and karate. I sit in the karate studio and write when they're doing their kicks and punches, and just any little bit of time I can grab.
Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you talk about writer's block, and I came up against this plot point I couldn't figure out. And I sort of think I don't have the luxury of writer's block.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that doesn't plague me too much. I mean, there are things that I need to figure out in a book that I'm writing. And often that just happens in my head when I'm not writing, when I'm driving or in the shower, walking the dog, making dinner. So I can kind of work out those things. And then I know that when I have that time to write, I really need to make it count.
You got to be getting words on the page.
I do. Yeah.
How do you keep track of it when you're like out in the world and doing things? Do you have like a notebook that you're constantly jotting things down in, or a notepad?
I have too many notebooks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a bedside notebook. I have a computer side notebook. I have my notes app in my phone. I have one in my backpack or purse, whatever I'm carrying that day. Lots of pens stuffed in every crevice, you know. But then, you know, if it's something I'm trying to work out, if I can't figure out how to bring these characters together, or, you know, what mystery elements are going to reveal the big, you know, whodunit or whatever, those just get worked out in my head, because it's sort of this ever-present thing I need to figure out. And so my mind just always goes there and kind of works through those knots.
Did you always want to focus on writing fiction?
I did. I mean, I enjoyed it when I was a kid, and even in college here at UW, I took some fun creative writing classes. But then, you know, very rightly, my mom was in my ear, do something practical. So I went the journalism route. So that was my degree. And I very quickly figured out right about my senior year, you know, when I needed to graduate and find a job, that newspaper writing was not for me. It was very regimented, and I didn't have that sort of must get the scoop, must get the interview sort of drive. I wanted to play with the words instead of, you know, just reporting without bias what was going on.
That sounds a lot like what Maggie Ginsberg says, who's a journalist who now writes fiction. She was like, I didn't know it would be so much easier to write fiction.
Right? Yes, I know
and
Maggie.
More fun.
Yes, we've had these conversations about sort of
that.
that transition. But she's been much more successful than me in actually making a career with her, you know, journalism.
Yes, she still likes
work.
that side.
Yes,
and you figured
absolutely.
out early, you were like, that's not for me.
I did. Yes. And so you listed all those random jobs that I've had. It sort of took me on a journey, and I realized that I really like graphic design, and sort of being able to pair words with making things look nice was really a sweet spot, because a lot of people are either or. They're not both.
Yeah.
And that eventually I worked at Bravo magazine for about 7 years, right during its beginning times.
Oh, cool.
And then I transitioned to UW, where I get to design posters and write press releases and work on, like, how can we communicate this science to everyone, to your grandma or your neighbor who doesn't necessarily know all these high concept ideas.
Sounds like a great blend of your skills then, of the writing and the design and the journalism background.
Yeah,
cool.
I sort of lucked into it, but also, you know, every little stop I made on the way led me there in a way. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And what book are you working on now? Or what are you working on now? Is it a book?
It is a book. Funny enough, the 2 leads are a pair of podcasting friends.
Stop
We
it.
are in.
It's about us. Is this research
Absolutely.
right now?
Yes. I may have follow-up questions, so be prepared.
Okay.
Oh
We're
my
into
gosh.
it. We will podcast
I love
about it though.
But so their podcast, they're called the Campfire Girls, and they investigate all those stories that people like to tell around the campfire, the creepy tales, that you might want to tell to scare the little kids and things. So they investigate the true origins, if there are any, of those types of stories.
Cool.
And they're trying to set up their next season. They're sort of like a season-long subject.
Okay.
And this young boy writes them a note and says, I live in this tiny town in Wisconsin, and my town is cursed. All of the men have disappeared. I am the last male in this town, and I think I'm next.
Whoa.
So they decide to go there and investigate to see if the curse is real and if there's any merit and if they can figure out what happened to these men.
Ooh,
That
it
is a
sounds
great
so
hook.
good.
Thank
I'm
you.
hooked.
Yes.
And I say all the men, but this is a town of it was maybe 10 people when
Yeah, it's, like,
everyone was still there.
small, right.
Exactly. It's like slow down to 45 on the highway, but don't stop kind of
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Wow.
So I'm getting
good.
close to finished with
Wow.
that one. So hopefully it will be out in the world at some point.
Good for you.
Thanks.
Do you design your jacket covers and everything too then?
Yeah, as a graphic designer.
I
That's a good
have
question.
designed covers, not for
Okay.
myself.
Oh.
A lot of self-published friends, I'll give
Mhm.
them a friend rate and help them.
Yeah.
I had a friend who had a not ideal experience with a very small publisher,
Mhm.
and she got her rights back and wanted to re-release it, and so I designed her new cover, and I love it. That's my secret.
Yeah.
If I could do a different job.
Design book covers?
Yes.
Ooh, so is this a call out to anyone out there, like self-published out there? Are you
absolutely
looking for
yes.
gig work there?
I mean, okay, so I do have a full-time job and two
Yeah,
kids,
right.
and I write
Right.
books, but that is a love thing. So
Yeah.
as long as I'm not inundated, I will make time for it. Yes.
Love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll
that's
make sure to
awesome.
link your socials and your
Yeah, that'd be
website
great.
and everything.
Yeah, but
So
this
people
one,
can find you.
yeah, this one I did not design. The publisher has their own, pipeline for how that works. I
Mhm.
did get
Sure.
3 options to choose from, and
Okay.
then was able to sort of give them feedback on the one I chose.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I felt lucky because some writers just get, this is your cover.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah.
No discussion.
Well, it's a great cover. And I
Thanks.
say all the time, it's okay to read by the cover of the book. Somebody
Oh, yeah.
put a lot of work into that and a lot of thought. And
Yep.
And that's okay that catches you and makes you want to read a book. That's
Definitely.
the point.
I mean, really, whatever makes you pick it up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Which brings me to my next question.
Yes.
What are you reading right now?
Okay, so I am a new-ish audiobook listener.
Okay.
With my busyness and my needing to drive people
Mhm.
places, I do like to listen in the car. Sometimes when I'm working around the house, I've got earbuds in too. But I am listening to Margot's Got Money Troubles
Yay, we love that
right
book.
now. Yes, I think I've heard you talk about that book on
I was
your
gonna
podcast.
say, did we spoil it for
Yeah,
you?
no, not at
Okay.
all. And Elle Fanning is the narrator, and she's quite good, I think.
Yes.
So I'm enjoying that. And I also just started last night. Do you know the Bernie Rodenbar books by Lawrence Block?
No.
No.
So he's sort of an old school mystery guy who's got a lot of different series.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is about a burglar who always seems to stumble into a different crime, usually a dead body of some sort. And then he's got to sort of prove to everyone that, yes, I may be a criminal, but I didn't do this crime.
Uh-huh.
And so I think this is about the 5th or 6th book. They started in the 70s, and he's done sort of a very slow-paced series throughout. I think the most recent one was even just a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Wow.
And when I find a series I love like that, I have to pace myself because I don't want to burn through them.
Mm-hmm.
So I do one like every maybe 6 months-ish.
Mhm.
I did that with the Travis McGee series by John D. MacDonald,
Mm.
where I started, long after he had died even,
Yeah.
and just really was careful with how. And then when I came to the end, I was so sad.
You know, it's a finite amount of content then when they're already
Yeah.
dead too. You're
Yep.
like, oh, this
There's
is it.
no way there's more. Yeah.
So
So
when you
yeah.
have a series that you've read for years, it's so much of a comfort read,
Mhm.
and to give that up, that's very
Yes,
sad.
it is
too.
hard.
Yeah,
It is hard. But, I suppose at some point I could go back and read them over.
Yeah, are
Absolutely.
you a
yeah.
rereader?
I am usually not.
Mm.
I burned myself out on rereading when I was reading the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. And it took him so long to write each book
Have
that
to keep rereading.
I would oh,
Yeah.
I need to reread these because I want to be fresh for the
Yep.
new one, right? But they're doorstops.
Oh.
And so I just couldn't. And then he ended up writing the last 3 right in a row. And so I just sort of read those when they all came out.
Nice.
But I don't. Sometimes I love someone's writing so much that I will reread. But often, if I'm just doing it for plot, I won't reread because I'll remember.
I've come around to that. I used to be a big rereader, and I feel like now maybe it's also the job of I need to have more breadth of reading, where I feel like rereading is an opportunity cost of like I could be reading a new book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So spending time rereading is harder, but I agree that when there are some where it's like the language, you just want that experience again of being bathed in that writer's language.
Exactly.
And you can't do that by, just picking up another random book. You'll maybe find another great thing, but I do reread still occasionally.
Yeah.
Not this year. I have not reread anything.
Neither have I. I've been like
We
full
are
steam ahead.
The podcast also really pushes us,
Of course.
because we got to be reading new stuff all the time.
And we want to talk about the new stuff that's coming out with customers that are coming in too,
Yeah.
and just to have a finger on the pulse. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I imagine.
But I love getting pushed to read new things, and I feel like this is an example where I just read this. Your book, I Know What You Did, this weekend because we were going to podcast with you, and I really liked it. I had such a great time, and I was like, I don't know that I would have like pushed myself to read that. It's not really my genre, but the thing, and one of the main reasons we wanted to have you on, and one of the main reasons I really loved it was the Madison setting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who wants a book that takes place in Madison and like you get the full Madison vibes, you should read Cayce's book, I Know What You Did. I just like that really added an element of both familiarity and almost like this exhilarating, like looking over your shoulder vibe when you're reading it in Madison.
Town.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I really enjoyed the way that you did that and like the sense of place that you put into it, which was so important to the story and also just so familiar then to the audience of like Madison book buyers, which is what we have here coming into the store. So yeah. I really liked it.
Yeah. Do you want to give a quick synopsis of I Know What You Did?
Yes. So this book is about Petal. She was born here in Madison. She is not someone who matches her name. She's very hard-edged and life has not been kind to her. She had lots of tragedy in her childhood. So as soon as she possibly can, she leaves Madison, goes to New York where she can be anonymous, make exactly the life she wants, live exactly the way she wants to, and forget about everything that happened here in Madison. Except that one day, a new book is released. It becomes a bestseller that spills all of these secrets that she's been trying to keep about what happened to her in her childhood. And because the author is using a pen name, it is not easy to figure out who wrote this. And she realizes, even though it is the last thing she wants to do, she comes back to Madison to figure out who wrote this book and why after 30 years, someone is spilling all of these secrets.
I know.
Were you always gravitating towards like thriller when you write, or?
I did a lot of practice books, I will call them. I won't call them unsold manuscripts. I will call them practice books. I started YA. And I did a little women's fiction. I tried a little sci-fi. And then I just realized everything I write has this element of mystery in it.
Yeah.
Something that I love that page turning quality that's like, what is happening? Who is behind this? Even if it's a literary novel, I love that feeling. And so I thought, why am I trying these other genres and shoehorning mystery in when really I should just write a mystery?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would call this exactly a mystery, but a suspense novel.
Yes.
Something that is not a whodunit maybe, but a what the heck is going on here type of book. 'Cause when someone asks me what kind of books do you write, I write, well, the characters have to figure out what the heck is going on here. And so, I just eventually said, I'm just going to try it, see if I can do it. And that's what this book is. It's the first mystery suspense that I'd ever really tried.
Oh, wow.
But it sounds like you read a lot of mystery and
I do now.
suspense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I always have read some, but, they say, read the genre you want to write in so you know the market, so you
Good
know,
point.
the other writers and all that. And so I do read a lot more mystery now than I used to.
Yeah.
And of course I love it. So.
I really liked, because as we've talked about on the podcast, I'm a wuss. I get scared very easily. And what I liked about this is it had the page turny whodunit feeling, but without being like scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is more like a mystery genre, right? Like I really love mysteries because I can, not even just cozy mysteries, but it's more just like I don't know. It's like the suspense, right? I like the suspense. What I don't like is the, I don't know, kind of jump scare
or the
horror
gore,
or the gore as much. So I feel like that, I really liked that about the pacing is I still had like the tension and like gripping. It says right on the cover, like it was gripping and I could feel the tension, but it wasn't like keeping me up at night.
Good. I'm happy that you say that because that's what I was going for.
Great.
Yeah. I don't love those sort of ultra high level sort of trick the reader with these outlandish, spooky, gory, gross, tragic, anything with kind kids, anything with stuff happening to kids. I can't do anymore. So I don't write cozies, but I write sort of at the level of gore and spookiness of a cozy.
Because you still have the reader guessing throughout the whole thing.
We were surprised.
Yeah. There's some red herrings in there. And like it kind of revs up like, oh my gosh, is it going to be this guy?
Yeah. Is it this person? Is it this person?
And you don't really want it to be because Yeah. I don't want to
I know
spoil
what
anything.
you mean. Yeah.
Listeners are going to not know what I'm talking about, but you know what I'm talking about.
And you fell for my trap.
Yes. And it was great. It was perfect.
It was really well plotted in that way too. Like I liked the red herrings. I liked the different possibilities of the whodunit. And then I think the twist at the end was unexpected, which I and good. And like, definitely it all came together. Another satisfying climax.
Yes.
We just said that in the last episode, and now that's my new favorite thing to make.
Like,
Jamie
what we're
blush.
saying?
Gotta put it in
is
every
to talk
episode
about
now.
satisfying climaxes.
I'm fine with it. It's great.
I definitely want to talk more about the Madison of it all.
Yeah.
Starting with what you said in your acknowledgement, because it resonated with me that you were like, it was fun to take this city that I love so much and know so well, and then make a character who really doesn't feel that way, right? Who like is tortured by this city because of her past there. And that was my big thing that I think was like keeping me uncomfortable the whole time was like, I love Madison. Like I grew up here. I went to East High.
West.
That was also, I was like, of course the murder happened at West. So I got to feel all pretentious about that. And I really loved the feeling that it was a new feeling for me thinking about Madison in a way where you wouldn't love it. Cause like everyone I know, we all just like, we love Madison. This is the best little bubble in the world. And so I thought it was cool because I was like, oh, does she hate Madison? Or, and when you said like, oh, I was doing that on purpose. I was turning that on its head. I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about your relationship with the city and what that was like for you.
Yeah, I grew up here. I went to college here. I lived in Seattle for about a year and a half after college, and I was like, nope, back home. Most of my family is here, and so nowhere else feels like home.
Yeah.
So, and I love to travel, but the best thing about traveling is that when you come home, you feel like you're at home. So yes, I think really all of that sprang out of the character. Yeah. Which was, it started as a writing exercise because I realized that most of the time when I was writing a character and they came to a dilemma, I would ask myself, what would I do in this dilemma? Because I wanted to make it feel authentic. But then I realized all of my characters were kind of the same and not that interesting and, would have different life experiences, so may make different choices. So I thought, as an exercise, let me write someone who is as opposite from me as I can think of, but still want to write about, and go from there. And so I sort of wrote the character and then decided, well, of course, she would leave Madison and hate Madison because I stayed in Madison and I love Madison. So that's kind of where that all came from. But it was really fun to think about, okay, what is this thing I love here that she would hate? Or if I go somewhere and it brings up good memories, what memories would it bring up for her? Like I grew up going to Michael's Frozen Custard on Monroe Street all the time. When we moved from the east side to the west side, which I did after 6th grade, we were right in that neighborhood. We lived on Rowley Avenue, and I would walk to West, and we would just go to Michael's a lot, and I would always get the chocolate frozen custard with salted pecans, and that was my order. And so I have all these wonderful memories. But of course, when she goes, it's closed. And it is now, very sadly. And so it would bring up different things for her sitting there on those benches thinking about the times she was there.
The Michael's on Monona Drive that I worked at in high school, still open.
Excellent. Yes.
We still have that one at least.
Yes, we do. And the chocolate shop that is in the spot now is lovely.
Yes.
So
I loved the quote that you had that it was like, Michael's was magic and Madison let it die. That's what Petal says in the book. And I was like, this is a great way of, you were really like kind of trying to find little things. I was like, that is something that I was mad about too. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
But I think like, as you write about Madison through this kind of negative lens, not all that negativity comes to the reader.
No,
like, I don't know, maybe if it's the Madison native that like can really leech onto it, but I feel like anybody reading this book like knows this community.
Yeah.
Like,
the fact that like she gets off the plane, she's like, I could run into my second grade teacher at any time. She feels so like I can't be inconspicuous anymore. We all feel like that in Madison. Like that is one of the drawbacks for sure. And I have lots of friends and even family who are like, yeah, Madison's fun, but like you gotta brace yourself basically when you go back there.
Yes.
For who you're gonna run into. Never know.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. It was hard for me to really twist my brain in that way, but it's fun too. And I think anytime I have a conversation about this book with someone who is from Madison or is familiar with Madison, that is what we talk about.
Yeah.
The references and the places that made it feel so real. I don't think I've had a single conversation with someone not from Madison about this book that focused at all on the setting. Which is really interesting. Almost all on the character.
I was going to ask you about that. What do people outside of Madison, like, what is their perspective on it? Because I did like that it was part of her character and, like, that's why it was important.
Right.
But I was thinking, like, am I just so enthralled with the Madison part that, like, what would someone who...
Yeah, I just think it's a different experience for them.
Yeah.
Because it could just be any town for the
anywhere.
most part.
Yeah.
And they're much more concentrated on the character, whether she's likable or not,
right?
Whether, she treats her boyfriend badly or, a lot of people talk to me about the opening scene of the book.
Oh, yeah.
Which was something that I did intentionally to try and sort of get the reader on her side. When you have a character, I don't worry too much about likable, unlikable characters, especially with women. I'm just like, be yourself. That's what I want to write. But I know readers don't feel that way a lot of the time. So that's sort of that save the cat technique where you want to get the reader on your character side right away. And I thought, what better place than a gynecologist's office to do that? But yeah, I mean, the conversations are very different. Like if I go to a writing convention and talk to readers there versus, someone like you guys or anyone in the Madison area who's read the book. Yeah.
I do think that, I guess I didn't think of Petal as unlikable because of the childhood trauma. And I always feel like I give such a huge pass to people where I just think like, I can't even imagine what that must have been like. And I'm just like, yeah, you carve out your weird little life that you want that is just like blaring out action movies and, rock music and keeping everyone at a distance. Like, I do not blame you based on what has happened to you. So that was, I think that was another way that you made her like not unlikable despite her choices.
Made the reader root for her.
Right. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, childhood traumas. That at least as a broad theme, everyone I think can kind of root for that person.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted it to feel earned. Like she is the way she is because of these things. She's not just rude. She's protecting herself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, as booksellers, we get a lot of tourism downtown Madison. And I think it's a book I like to sell to people out of town who want a view of Madison, want something fiction, want something fun, and like we'll take them for a ride. But it's been really interesting to see customers come in here from out of town and be like, give me a Madison book.
It's true. There's like a, I don't know, voyeuristic maybe tendency when you're traveling to be like, I want to learn about the place I'm in. And also I want to kind of like see what the stories are like here.
Exactly. Well, and I think giving them a little taste of what we would experience when we read a Madison book.
Yes.
That sort of in club feeling like,
Yes.
I know these places.
Yeah.
They may read about somewhere that they saw on their trip or they,
Right.
or want to visit. So I think that's part of it too.
The part where I felt a little called out was talking about, in a great way. And I was like, whoa, that is super relatable. I never thought of it before. You were talking about, so these two characters are grew up in some of the wealthy neighborhoods. So Shorewood Hills is where a lot of it takes place.
Yep.
Maple Bluff is where Petal is originally from.
Yep.
I know a lot of people from those neighborhoods.
Same.
And I grew up on Lake Monona, but
Okay.
like in a house on Lake Monona.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said that they're fancy Madison homes on opposite shores of Lake Mendota and compared it to Great Gatsby, like looking at each other across the lake, and then said that the Lake Waters had baptized them both with the same privilege and one I could never understand, I was like, oh, the lake water privilege. It like seeped into my soul. I was like, I understand.
Yeah.
That was a really great insight, I think, into Madison and into these little pocket neighborhoods that we have
Yeah.
of wealth and the lack of sidewalks. I used to think about that all the time.
Yep.
When I had to go into Maple Bluff or Shorewoods, and I'm like, you don't have sidewalks here?
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of childhood memories from these neighborhoods. So, and also in the 90s where I was like, oh, this is real. This is,
Yep.
it felt super real to me.
Yep. I know. When I lived on the east side, we were the first house outside of Maple Bluff.
Oh, wow.
So the limit sign was right outside.
Right
our
on the
house.
wrong
Wrong side of the
Sherman.
track.
We really, and there were certain people, without naming names, that did make us feel that.
Oh,
Even though we had a
Wow.
gorgeous
I
house on the
bet.
lake,
I'm sure, yeah.
and then after 6th grade, we moved, over to by West High, and it was definitely a change. That was one thing in the book that was true to me,
Yeah.
was that I made that change, and it was very different.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to write I Know What You Did? What was that writing process like?
It was about a year.
Okay.
Usually that's about where I am with drafting and revising and getting readers to help me figure out if the thing works.
Mhm.
So yes, about a year.
Did you feel when you were writing and you're like, okay, the practice books are now like this one is going to
This
be the
one's
one
gonna
that
make
I'm
it.
going to sell and it's going to get out there?
It did feel like something had clicked.
Yeah.
Nice.
I had a lot of years before that, maybe 6 or 7 years before that, those practice books I did try to sell. I did try to
Sure.
get an agent. I did try with them. And for whatever reason, they didn't work. I had 2 different agents in that time. And this one just sort of felt special in a different way than the other ones had. And when I took it to my agent, who had signed me based on a women's fiction novel that did not sell, she was not into it. I just think it wasn't her thing,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which is totally fair. And we very amicably parted ways because I said, I think I have something here.
Mhm.
And I actually ended up selling it myself without an agent.
Wow.
Good for you.
There are publishers out there who will take
Uh-huh.
submissions from writers. And Crooked Lane is a crime fiction publisher that luckily has a distribution through Penguin Random House. So they have a bigger reach than a lot of smaller publishers do. So I like to say publishing is a lot of luck, but you
Yeah.
do have to work really hard to put yourself in that spot where you can take advantage of the luck.
Mhm.
So
What was it like when your baby was out in the world? I hear there's a lot of emotions when we talk to
Yes.
authors about
you
it.
get that big box that you get to open. You see your
Mhm.
copies for the first time. That was a big deal. I made a very cheesy unboxing video and
Love
put it
it.
online. And yeah, it was, I mean, so many things were happening that I felt like I couldn't really stop and think about any one thing. And I have gotten a lot more comfortable talking about the book, talking to people, talking to groups. But my book launch, I was being interviewed. I was very nervous. It was a packed house, which I, felt very lucky about because Madison book, Madison people, it was an easy, so my nerves got in the way a little bit, I'll say,
Yeah.
but it was very exciting and it felt like, oh, I finally did it,
Yay. Well, and then the next one.
Now
will
I just
be
gotta
even
do it over
easier.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like the second kid, right?
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah, right. You have no children.
I looked at you for confirmation.
Yes, I have a little bit of an idea what I'm doing, but it doesn't make it any less traumatic or
Right.
painful.
Yes, exactly.
Or,
Just like the second kid.
Exactly.
It's as
yes.
bad, but you at least have done it before.
Yes, exactly.
Did you kind of have this new book that you're working on? Did you like have this idea kind of waiting for you when you put this one out in the world, or?
So I have a finished book that I've been trying to sell,
Okay.
but it is a little bit. I feel like I write these books that straddle genres and mix elements together in a way that makes it difficult for agents and publishers to be like, I know how to sell this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have not had a whole lot of luck selling the one or getting an agent with the one that is finished and has been finished for a while. Because from the time I got my book deal to the time it came out was a year. So I had a year to like use my nerves to work on something else.
Yeah.
And so I think either the book needs to be changed or it's not the right time. So I think I'm going to put that one aside and work on selling this one in the new year probably. But I had actually written a short piece featuring this weird old lady who ran a tavern in the middle of nowhere. Sort of a short thing. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. And so that sort of expanded to make the setting of this new book, the podcaster's book. And then the book that I'm trying to sell now, I added this little element where the podcasters were going to do a story about the people in that book, just as a tiny little side plot. And I thought,
Easter egg.
Yeah, I was like, the Campfire Girls, that's cool. Like that could even be a series, of them going to investigate these different, spooky things.
Definitely.
Legends or folklore or campfire stories. And so when I was getting ready to write the next one and I had this weird town, I was like, well, what if the Campfire Girls went to that town? And then sort of all grew. And then I was reading a Maureen Johnson suspense novel. She does YA. She wrote the Truly Devious books.
Okay.
Which are excellent, by the way. So good. And I was reading one of the later books and I thought I had the mystery figured out. I was like, I know what's going on here. I've solved it. I'm so smart. And I was completely wrong.
Yeah.
But I took that idea that I had come up with to solve her mystery and used it in this mystery.
Oh,
so it was one of those like reading for inspiration things.
Yeah.
So all those little bits came together into this book that I'm working on.
It's interesting when you talk about the like cross genre, hard to sell things, because I also think about that. So some of my favorite books are cross genre.
Right.
Like that's always the most interesting when there's like a little bit of, there's some mystery and there's some fantasy and there's some romance and there's some suspense and those are the most complex, interesting books, I think. But as a bookseller, I have to know what shelf to put it on, and I can't read them all. And so I also I need to have a comp that I can give people saying it's just like lessons in chemistry, or it's just, where you can give people, or it's like The Princess Bride. And even if it's a movie or some kind of comp, right?
Yep,
like that is what will grab people. And you want it to be by its buddies so that people know where to go find it. So I feel like I struggle with that a lot still, of like those two opposing forces of, we love a mixed genre book when you're reading it, but in order to find it,
I know
you have to be able to sell it somehow.
Yes. The eternal question. I find myself ping-ponging a lot between thriller, suspense, mystery.
Yeah.
Where do my books fit? I'm not even sure. When I got the book blurbs for I Know What You Did from very kind authors who read it and gave me a quote, they all called it a psychological thriller. And I thought, I didn't think I wrote a psychological thriller, but I get it. You're in Petal's head a lot.
Yeah.
And the thriller part was really what worried me, because I thought, geez, with thriller, you have this pace expectation that it's going to be fast. And this isn't a super fast book. I write lots of character driven stuff. So you're like, the characters have their own path throughout the mystery that's being solved. So I hesitate to call it a thriller. I'm happy for anyone to call it whatever they would like if they're enjoying it.
Sure.
But I tend to end up at suspense when describing my stuff.
Yeah.
Or even psychological suspense, which is a little different than thriller. But yeah, the comps are helpful to figure out, especially when you're trying to get an agent or sell your book, say it's like this
for
one.
Fans of blank.
Yes.
And I think the other authors out there will know comps are really hard.
Yeah.
to find.
Right.
Yeah. The podcaster book I'm saying is a mix of Schitt's Creek and Bodkin, if you watch that Netflix series.
Oh, I haven't.
Didn't.
Because there's a roadside motel in the book.
Oh.
And Bodkin is about some podcasters who go to Ireland. Yes.
Oh, I do
think
know what
Ireland,
you're talking about. Yes.
to investigate some creepy stuff that's happened.
Oh, those sound like great comps.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm, neither of them are books.
That's
but,
okay.
But I think, that's where I've settled with this
It's
new
vibes.
one.
We talk
It
about
is
that.
vibes.
It's
Yes.
on vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So feel pretty good about those comps.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Exciting. I'm excited for that one.
Yeah.
What?
I know. I'm excited to
I know,
read
I'm
anything
like,
about
you're gonna
podcasters.
have like
oh.
a manuscript we can read sometime next year, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping kind of by the end of this year to finalize it.
Cool.
And then, agents and everyone takes a
Yeah.
break over the holidays.
Mhm.
So early
Yeah.
in the new year, hopefully I'll be sending it out.
It sounds like you have a lot of work written. What is your schedule like? Are you very adamant about I write for 2 hours a day every morning or
I wish I was a morning person.
Right?
I am not.
Me neither.
The wonderful Maggie Ginsberg gets up at 5 a.m.
I know.
and does her headphones on, zone.
Mhm.
I can't do that. Also, my husband and I split everything quite evenly. And so I do the morning, get the kids up, get them to
Mhm.
school, and he does all the pickups. And then we split the karate runs. So I have mom responsibilities
Yeah.
in the morning. So it's
Yeah.
hard. I mean, I guess I could get up at 5 a.m., but I'm not going to do
Uh-huh.
so I'm not. I'm a grab it when I can find it.
Yeah.
So I know that a couple times a week I'll have an hour at karate where I can do something. I know I'll have lunch hours most of the week. And weekends, are all over the place. So I could just kind of do what I can. And every once in a while, I'll just say to my husband, I need to go away for a day or two. Sometimes it's here in Madison. I've also gone to Florida where my mom lives half the year for 4 days,
Little
a long
writing
weekend.
retreat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She cooks for me. It's so wonderful. And then I get a bunch of stuff done.
Sounds
Genius.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. very
Hopefully in the
cool.
winter you're doing that. Going
Yes,
to Florida.
Yeah, go to
usually,
Florida.
usually it's either the end of February or beginning of March.
Yeah, the correct time to go
Mhm.
to Florida.
Yes. I did a wonderful writing workshop this last Saturday at Oregon Public Library. That was wonderful. So I hope in the future I get to do more stuff like that because I love talking about craft stuff and just talking through weird sticking points with other writers. That was what the talk was about. It was are you stuck in the beginning of your manuscript,
Yeah.
the middle, or the end? Here are some tricks that you might find. This is what works for me, that kind of thing. So just CayceOsborne.com. We'll have anything that's coming up for me.
Is there a really amazing event that you have done that sticks out to you?
I have come to love conventions.
Yeah.
So there's writing conferences, right? I just
Mhm.
went to the Wisconsin Writers Association annual conference in La Crosse, and it's a lot of craft stuff. It's a lot of other writers, talking about the business and everything that goes along with writing. But then there are conventions where it's readers and writers,
Yes.
and you get a mix of both, and those are so fun. And so my favorites have been Left Coast Crime, which is a crime, convention that
Ooh.
happens on the left coast of the United States somewhere. This past year, it was in Seattle area. The year before, it was in Tucson. And this year, I got to be on a panel and talk about stuff, and I
Wow.
loved it. So those are my best memories so far.
That's awesome. We
Yeah.
just went to a conference and it's just the same kind of vibe where you have that camaraderie that
Yeah.
you guys all love the same things.
Yeah.
And you get to kind of ruminate on that.
Yeah, you know each other's struggles, and and it's if you end up going to these things annually, you'll see the same groups of people, and you make friends that way.
Long-term friends.
Yes, that you may only see once a year.
Mhm.
So it's really nice. The writing community is wonderful. Especially I found the crime writers, we write about these terrible things, but really they're all very kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet. Well, Cayce, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's been really fun. I listened to you guys, and so it was, I've done a few podcasts, but it's never oh, I'm a huge fan of this podcast. Now I get to be on it until today.
Yay,
so thank you.
That's great.
Thanks so much for listening. We were very happy to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Everybody, by I Know What You Did. if you're looking for a Madison suspense. Oh my gosh. A Madison suspense.
It's okay. She said we can call it whatever we
Yeah,
want.
if you find
True.
it thrilling,
If you
go
buy
ahead.
it, you can call it
thrilled.
whatever
Yes,
you want.
yes.
All right. Thanks for listening to Book Pop. We'll see you at the bookstore.
Bye.
Bye.
Book Pop Podcast is presented by Lake City Books. Produced by Jamie Anderson and Molly Fish. Edited by Jamie Anderson. Music and art by Lovick. Follow us on Instagram at bookpop.podcast. Find out more at our website, bookpoppodcast.com.